So my dissertation was an attempt to clarify how I balance my own artistic intention with material agency in my forging process. And the dissertation, the writing process of the dissertation and the forging process of my practice both informed each other as they both progressed.
I really like bringing in like digital 3D work into knit, and kind of like seeing how they kind of like cross over and can inform each other rather than like giving up control of making to like a digital thing. How can we like embrace it? And I really enjoy doing that.
There are many issues associated with rural communities that often get overlooked because people are so busy sort of being in awe of the picturesque landscape that they don't think about, the fact that there's a whole host of hidden challenges. And so the purpose of the essay and the research overall, along with my level 6 projects more broadly for the whole of level 6, is looking at how art can impact those or address those challenges in a positive way.
I really like hearty design. I like looking at comforting, luxurious packaging. So I thought that my dissertation related to that.
In the summer, me and a friend went to actually see the work in an exhibition at the Courtauld called Abstract Erotic. And it was seeing it, like we sat with it, because it was quite a small exhibition, but when we sat with it, it was like, God, this really means something. And sometimes you see something, you're like, oh, I really resonate with it. And I don't, like, sometimes there's not enough writing on the plaque that explains it. So you then have to step back and just look at it, how it is and why it's in those places and what that could mean. And then take that into your research and just keep thinking about that. And that was my aha moment, I think, because it was just like everything just made sense.
Because I was doing practice-based research, basically, I was just doing what I normally do, but an analysis into that. So I was making the work and then diving into like the specifics into it, which was cool because I never really thought that deeply about what I was doing. So it sort of explained to myself, oh, these are the thought process behind it.
Well, since 2024, all my work has been focused around Palestine, Israel, particularly Gaza. So since 2024, I've been making different performance pieces, some paintings relating to it, but mostly around performance. And I'm trying to find ways to deal with what I see as the sort of horror of what's happening, and not to sensationalize it, but try and find maybe human stories in it, or to help people understand it better as much as I can do that as one human being.
It relates into my practice like quite deeply because a lot of my practice is rooted in working with the land and sort of being more conscious and sustainable, and also working in collaboration, whether that's with people but also with nature. So it's all blended in really quite well. And in my last project, I did a set of tone cyanotypes with botanicals that I used, that I made with the toners that I made for my dissertation. So yeah, it's tied in all really nicely, and I found some really nice like results. So yeah.
Because I was such a massive fan of Taro Okamoto before I even wrote the dissertation. I'd been to Japan, and I'd been to the Taro Okamoto Memorial Museum, and I'd also been to visit the Tower of the Sun several times. So I knew firsthand what it was like moving through it, and particularly on my visit, I knew what it was like to move through it while needing a cane for extra assistance while walking. And the way that kind of changed the experience, especially when contrasted against sort of the overhauls they had to perform on the tower that took away some of the accessibility it used to have in the 1970s. It just got me thinking on a much deeper level about sort of the implications of how we update and how we upgrade, or, update and upgrade our surroundings, but who gets left out of that in the process.
Mainly the fabrication of old into new, trying to make something brand new that looks like it's been around for a while.
focusing on horror medium and how lighting and texturing can affect like the viewer's feelings towards like, well, the environment and character design.
Like, I use all kind of natural materials for my practice anyway, but it sort of made me research a lot more into the more like where the materials came from. I looked into the book Cradle to Cradle, which is all about like where the material first came from and how that ends in the end. So it goes through the whole kind of like material focus and stuff like that about where it comes from, and then when it ends, which is how I kind of structured my dissertation. So I went from like growth and then designing and making, and then ended with like back to the soil and kind of disposal methods.
I explored Karen Barard's agential realism framework from their book Meeting the Universe Halfway, and the book really emphasizes the agency of matter in the Barard calls it the ongoing becoming of the universe. It's derived from Barard's a quantum physicist and philosopher, so it's derived from Barard's interpretation of quantum physics, and it emphasizes how the boundaries of science make us. They mean that we need to reevaluate the way that we approach the world around us and our relationship to specifically matter.
I actually came across a doctrinal thesis that someone had written from Newcastle University that was almost exactly looking at the thing I was looking at. So I used that a lot. And that would be that, and John Berger, he wrote like a small essay for his landscape series, which sort of talked about rurality and the sort of like historic approach to peasants and peasantry and social structure, and how that the sort of like the urban view of the rural and those sorts of things. So it wasn't like a hard and fast, theory of something that you might have for other subjects, but it was primarily a research-based project that used first-hand interviews with arts organisations based in Herefordshire who are obviously doing the thing, or hopefully doing the thing that I was trying to sort of prove my point in my essay, that rural arts organisations do have a positive impact on rural communities.
The main theory was practices research, which sort of went throughout the whole essay. And then I also studied semiotics, which was basically in every piece I analysed, it was the semiotics of that. And that's sort of what I based my practice-based research off of. And then T.S. Eliot's studies as well, which was basically saying like, oh, all my work is built off previous work, which was really interesting.
I looked at Roland Barthes' semiotics and Roland Barthes' myth, and I used Alice Twemlow decriminalisation of ornament to help me with my dissertation.
Donna Haraway's Staying with the Trouble, Making Our Kin, Griselda Pollock's After Effects, After Images, Trauma and Aesthetic Transformation within the Virtual Feminist Museum, and Carl Jung's Theory on Human Psyche.
One was about art and resistance, how art can be used for resistance, and there's a lot of theoretical writing about that. Also, Gramsci's concept of hegemony, and Bentham's concept of the panopticon. So that was like a 19th century idea about how you could build a guard room in the center, say, of a prison, and then have 5 different wings. And if you had the guard in there, everyone felt they were being seen, and it could be to a point you didn't need the guard. People felt that they were being watched. And that seemed to really relate to the West Bank and Gaza, the surveillance that's there. And then hope as a sort of a theory, because that seems like quite a key theme that I was finding within Palestinian artists, and their culture was one of hope and not despair.
I had quite a lot of Lefebvre in there. That was that was recommended to me. But my favorite's always been Certo. Like, that was a brilliant recommendation. Thank you for Certo. Because I just prefer the model of Certo. His whole idea that everyone made their own way. Everyone makes their own path. Everyone has agency in defining their own lives and how they move through a space. Whereas Lefebvre was sort of very top down. These are the forces that govern. Therefore, these are your material circumstances. Which, in a place like Okinawa, a place that's been sort of reshaped by sort of Japanese imperial conquest and then American military bases, of which 75% of American military bases stationed throughout Japan are all focused on Okinawa. It was interesting to think then about how both of these theories existed and obviously seem a bit at odds with each other at first, but how both top-down lived realities of Lefebvre and also Certo and the Native Okinawans lands right disputes fit under the banner of Certo and bringing back some agency into living.
I didn't explore much photographic theory other than The Mindful Photographer by Sophie Howarth. I also explored the theme of reciprocity by from A Prey in Sweetgrass by Bob and Will Kimner, and intuitive foraging, which was really nice, like bringing in like these different aspects to sort of form the like mindful photographic process, so which I haven't seen as like with science web. So it's like, things that has been rooted in like medicine or caring for the land or eating on, or like more ancient ways of being, and then looking at mindful photography as like like a walking practice and going out and photographing that, bringing them in and doing it with cyanotypes and cameraless photography, and then making these beautiful prints that actually have the land infused in them. It was really lovely. It was really enjoyable when I was making the work, the first bit, and then once I sort of had all the body of work made, it got quite stressful trying to put it together because it was practice led. I couldn't figure out how to structure it, and like put it all together because it wasn't like the typical essay. So I got really stressed. But I think once it came together at the end, it was like I was really happy with it, and I was like, yeah, this is good.
Picking a topic was like the thing that really was hard for me. Trying to find something that I was interested in, related to my practice, and was like really relevant for now. I was like, what on earth do I do? And then when I found that, I was like, oh, that kind of fits every criteria I'm looking for. So I think that was like the let's crack on.
I was very cautious about contacting the four artists because I felt I don't know what their living conditions are, and it feels really just wrong. I feel like to say, oh, I'm a student here and I'd like to, but I got encouragement from Dan and other friends to say, send them an Instagram message. They don't have to respond. And one artist did. And two of the four are still in Gaza. Two have come out. One is in London doing an MA, and one is in France as part of a refugee art program that France has. But one of the Gazan artists who's living there wrote quite an amazing piece, very powerful. It sort of brings tears to my eyes, but I was so, I just felt overwhelmed that someone had put that time in. But I also realized the other way, what's happening in places like that in the world, you can feel that the rest of the world's forgotten you. So for someone to contact you to say that they're interested and would you like to contribute must also be a very positive thing. You're not forgotten.
I would be in the forge for a few days, and that would influence then maybe a section of my dissertation, or I'd have to rewrite it because I discovered something new, or I thought about something in a different way. And then through writing my dissertation, when I would go back into the forge, I would be approaching my forging process in a different way. So there was a constant flux between not just my dissertation changing my practice, but my practice influencing my dissertation.
I took my trip to Okinawa in January, so that was very much while the writing period was still ongoing. But it was sort of actually physically being there and, for example, just being on a tourist bus going past the US military base, and they would have all of these tanks sort of lined up in procession, the people just walking by on their commutes to and from the grocery store, from like nurseries, could just see all the Americans display military might. It was interesting in a way to see how it was interesting to see the parts that I'd got right in my research, but also the parts that, you know, maybe weren't best covered through just, for example, scrolling on JSTOR, or, you know, stuff that you can only really experience by actually being there, and being there in a critical sense.
I think my concepts played a big role, possibly more than my theories. They delved deeper into the packaging, but also like other things like shelf presence, interactions with the product, that I wasn't expecting that, thinking about how the daily use of lighting a candle or sitting down enjoying a drink, I didn't think about that effect, but that is something that they explored. Yes.
So during the project, using the practical side to actually look into it kind of aided in my research and like back to what I was trying to say and think of what I was going down the lines of. So when I created the creature, it looked all nice and good in the lighting. I did some lighting in a substance beta and just basic all-round lighting. I thought, okay, what does it look like in the dark? So massively reduced the exposure of the lighting, and it covered it in shadows. And it kind of made like, you could see just the silhouette of it, which is like, okay, what is this thing? The very dark lighting of like underglowing underneath really, I guess, backed up claims of that. It's like, okay, lighting can make it more eerie. Because if you just got like a clinical lighting, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, cool, we've got a model. But if you see it where it's like, oh, wow, what is this thing? It adds more to the mystery.
I found it quite interesting how like the final outcome was, I was basically changing a semiotic. So I took away all the color from my work. One piece I did worked, one piece didn't. So I found it interesting how like the essay still worked, even though at the end I kind of like failed, which is really interesting. It was still a cool study, even though like the outcome wasn't that cool. But what I found out was useful.
I'm really dyslexic, so yeah, it was really nice to have the option to do a different, like, not as conventional essay, because I can never wrap my head around normal academic essays. I tried and I didn't quite fail, but you know, it was close to it. And I think that the practice-led dissertation was a really good option because it felt like an extra project that I could lean into and sort of make the work and research it, and it all felt quite like easier to do in a sense, even though it was more challenging because there was no like real set structure or sort of way of going about it. But I found it a lot more fun and easier to wrap my head around. Yeah.
Because for me, I'm not an academic person at all. And so I find this aspect of the degree incredibly arduous. And so in order to sort of help motivate myself, it was just, I suppose it was the key thing was finding a way to make the dissertation work for me and work for my practice, so the dissertation served my overall purpose of what I wanted to achieve in level 6 more broadly. Research, whilst it can feel at times really tedious, you can actually make it work for yourself. And particularly because I was doing a more research-based essay, I actually realized I could use it as a networking opportunity as well, because I was able to secure interviews with some of the key arts organizations in Herefordshire.
The most interesting realization, I suppose, that I had was that entanglement isn't just an interesting phenomenon that occurs in the world, but it's more like a condition that structures reality, I suppose. It structures both the universe, and then within that, my own making practice is structured by entanglement as a theme, I suppose.
Because I chose Severance and Grand Budapest Hotel as the examples. I think looking into those and finding what the designers were really thinking and how audiences have interpreted the design has been very beneficial.
I guess kind of like learning more about sort of myself and like my personal, like what I wanted to do sort of after uni, and go more into the like growth aspect of the process and like how that links to, because I do like weaving and natural dyeing, so it's quite kind of linked to the process. But yeah, getting more into the kind of growing part of it.
I was trying to argue, is it ethical, is it useful? And there was no definitive yes or no. And I think the more I looked into it, the more I was like, yeah, but it can be used for this, but then this is a negative impact. And I think I kind of like came up with my own kind of, this is what we could do, and propose like the idea of, yes, it could be used in certain situations, but it's not something that should be used as like a takeover. It could be used as like a celebration of like the way we are advancing, and like a tool to support other like areas that maybe need that support, rather than the complete overhaul of physical to a complete digital world.
I think because of the research that I did, it allowed me to think why I make things and why I have to make these things. Like I can't not. So having the research was just like, it just solidified it really.
So what I was doing, I found was just like subconscious. Whereas when I dove into it, I was like, whoa, I didn't realize I was subconsciously doing all this. It's really interesting.
I guess an aha moment was finding out in my conclusion, like after all my research, luxury can exist without coziness, but coziness uses luxury to emphasize its language.
I think it's humbled me in a lot of ways. It's made me think about these artists making works against the odds. One artist, Sharif Shaheen, he built a lighthouse in Gaza by the harbour. There was no lighthouse, and he made it out of scrap materials that he found from the war on Gaza in 2014. So he collected metal and glass, and he built this beautiful lighthouse that actually worked. And it's been destroyed again, but he says, well, when I can, we'll rebuild it. So that sort of, I can't imagine that sort of inner strength just to keep going against the odds. And that's made me be humbled, but think, oh God, I just got to get on with it. And time is important.
And I remember speaking to Ross about it, going like, our tutor, and saying that, oh, how does this work? And we looked into how the modeling could be done. And once it was done and going into the texture workflow and seeing of how organic you can make it, I mainly do hard surface modeling, which is like mechanical, metal and all that. So going into organic was a very different bag, but figuring out of how it works to like do the skin into everything else was like, oh, okay, so that's how I can make it more scary. How can the lighting add to this as well? And that's throwing down more lights.
Some of the plants that are used in like plant-based photographic developing can also be like made into a toner. So I wasn't expecting like any results at all from like a few different plants and berries and stuff like that. And they came out with some of the most like beautiful results that I wouldn't expect. And they also affected, when I mixed them, they affected the outcomes in ways that I didn't expect either. So there was a lot of like quite beautiful, unexpected things that happened from trying different ways of bringing in plants. So yeah, maybe around a month before the deadline, because I was just sort of making the work, and it was really good fun making the work and reading into the different theories and sort of putting things together. But I didn't quite know what I was trying to say. I was just letting the work lead it, and until very soon before the deadline, and it sort of clicked, and I was like, okay, this makes sense now. I'm trying to bring these different aspects together to make this thing, and it made sense. But yeah,
it has made me a bit more excited about FMP. It was kind of like the start that I needed. That was like, okay, you've got this that you're interested in. Now you can use that to like make something with it. And I think that kind of just was the start for me. and kind of being more open to using more digital stuff in my own work, because before it was like just a hobby, and now I've like found the ability to really bring it in. So I think it's just made me more excited about it, if anything. So I am making a knitwear collection and fashion based on kind of like the objection and rejection to like new technologies like AI, and the kind of nostalgia it's created for like the early 2000s, 90s, where things were purely physical, and kind of like how we would kind of go back to that and want to have like things on us all the time, not just be reduced to like one phone for like every single thing.
So the pick 3 links to my practice by underpinning my overall aims for my level 6 projects.
Some of the parts of the dissertation, I was looking at how age is like fabricated, I guess, and through my project, which is going to have a bit of the modern mixed with the old school, it'll be important to know how to bring that in.
Plans for my final, for practice 6, my final project, are basically the foundation was laid while I was writing my dissertation, and towards the end of the last making module, that was when the theory and the practice came together for me. And then going forwards, now that I've concluded my dissertation, it's built the framework that I'm building my making practice on.
Once I read into what her work was about and why she made it, it then, like, all of those pieces then fed into what I was making, because it was so interesting, and it meant, like, through materiality you can tell a story. So it was through that it helped me connect them together.
Yeah, so for my final major project, I'm going to be rebranding a sports team and sort of focusing on one individual aspect. So I'm sort of going to be letting the photography shine, so sort of platforming that, which is similar to my dissertation, because I was sort of focusing on one aspect and seeing what I could draw from that as much as possible. So that will be really interesting, and I look forward to that.
I'm now doing wedding stationery and thinking about how the audience might see it and interact with it, such as paper textures. That comes under like wabi-sabi, feeling the grain and all of that. I'm now thinking about it for my wedding stationery with the paper textures, and something I'm exploring, yes.
For the degree show, I want to do something which's got some weight to it, because it feels that it's an opportunity to have the time to show some work like that. So the moment what I'm looking is a piece called 100,000 Rose Petals, where over a number of days I will count out 100,000 rose petals, and I probably won't reach 100,000, but each petal will signify a person, a soul.
Horror is something that I like to kind of delve into more, because it's a really open medium. So I'm a big fan of like the cyberpunk genre, the horror genre, sci-fi. So it's like, okay, cool, body horror. How does this go into it? How does the fear of abjection, the uncanny, like how do like it's like you can move the uncanny from body horror to like synthetics and everything like that. So right now for my FMP, I'm doing like cybernetic augmentations. And if you compare it to mediums like, well, I mean, I'm literally wearing a jacket from like Cyberpunk 2077. It's very much like in the like right in front of you, like, oh yes, cybernetics, but it looks kind of natural, but it's still something uncanny to it. And it's like a bit like, how do they make it weird? How do they make synthetic robots look so weird yet not?
I did the dissertation alongside practice 5, and practice 5 and practice 6 sort of have an umbrella theme of human nature connection. I took environmental portraits and I made cyanotypes from these alongside my dissertation. So I was making toners with the intuitive foraging method, so it was not scientific, and it was like really letting intuition and mindfulness lead. And yeah, so I made a series of about 30 cyanotypes toned with different plants, and yeah, the outcome was really beautiful because I wanted the whole project to be like physically infused with the land as well. So yeah, it was nice. So and also for this practice 6, I'm going to be experimenting with toning cyanotypes got on fabric. So the research that I did in the dissertation has given me a good foundation for both projects.
Taro Okamoto originally studied as an anthropologist. So when he first went over and took his photos, he was going there as a photographer, as an artist, but also as an anthropologist second, because that was his first qualification. And sort of looking within circles of anthropology and seeing how much the same language is used to describe cultures and ways of living and being throughout all of history, it adds like a further bit of meaning existentially towards what you're doing when you sort of create. So my F&P at the moment is is an Okinawa photo book, and it has lots and lots of inserts like tracing paper, where I've put sort of I've put the official narrative from the Okinawan Prefectural Museum. I've put Taro Okamoto's recordings of his impressions and his short prose, some of which was included in the dissertation, but also information from the minority rights sites as well, in defining what it means to be Okinawan in the broader context of Japan.
So I think the research and the examining of that subject has really helped just broadly inform all of my work across the whole of level 6 projects, because each semester 1, semester 2 and the dissertation are all linked with the same overarching subject really. But the dissertation is like the string that ties the whole thing together. Having been neurodivergent is like a gift when it comes to being creative, because it's like the gift that keeps on giving, to the point where you almost can be overwhelmed with ideas because your brain's firing off in so many different directions about the creative potential for doing something. Whereas the academic side of things has been very difficult. But I will say the support I've had from the learning support team has been just so valuable in terms of helping me stay on track, in terms of motivating me, in terms of, I mean, quite honestly, I wouldn't have achieved as high a marks that I've achieved if it wasn't for the help and extra support that I received as, you know, a student who's neurodiverse. And also I think just as a mature student, just who's been out of education for so long, helping me not to feel overwhelmed about the scale of having to suddenly do all this essay writing, which, you know, I've never really done before. So, the learning, my learning experience has been overall, whilst it's been challenging, it's been positive, and overall, you know, it's been very worthwhile.
I feel like it's really highlighted important areas in my practice, like, you know, working with the land and being more conscious and aware to an even like deeper level of like every stage of photography, you know, photographing and printing, and then taking that further and the experimental thing, but also slowing down with the whole practice and really leaning into that rather than, you know, it's a very fast paced world, and that's the whole sort of thing that I'm trying to say, being more mindful with the speed of how my work is going. So I think it's just highlighted all those bits. Yeah.
My main thing was just like starting to kind of enjoy it, which I haven't really kind of enjoyed writing very much before, but I think just writing about something that I cared about so much and sort of the research and all of that just contribute to kind of actually really enjoying it and being really happy with the outcome.
I really enjoyed it. Like, I didn't expect to enjoy writing so much, but the more I got into it, I was like, oh, okay, this is really good. Yeah, I really enjoy this.
One of the strengths, the things that make your finished creative work strong, is the time spent researching, doing in-depth research. And even though it might not look like it shows up in your finished work, the fact it's there, that it's informed your process, it's informed your decision-making process, I think it means that you're more likely to come out with stronger work at the end than if you just go, oh, forget that, I'll just make it up as I go along. I think if you do that, then probably that will show in the finished work.
And let let the work lead it. Don't try and force something on it. Like, oh, I've got this idea, I'm going to try and pair these two things together, rather than going, I'm making the work in this. It's what it's like happening organically, because that will come best results.